the Eagles seem like they're acting scared to me. I don't know why, but at some point something tells me, Ryan, in about a month and a couple of weeks, we're going to know if Carson Wentz is a quarterback here or not.
Live from the Prop Swap Studios on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, it's The Fix with Ryan Rothstein. Presented by Prop Swap. Prop Swap that ticket and cash in while the odds have improved.
Rothstein was a hell of a handicapper. I can tell you that.
Right now, you ain't ready for a fight, go ahead and go home. Because that's what this going to be for 4 quarters. A fight. We always win when we fight together. That's how winning is done.
Now get out there and do it to me.
Pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's a game at the buzzer.
Hold on, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished when I would ask the more.
All right, welcome back. The Fix with Ryan Rothstein, 8:30. Thanks again to Barrett Brooks. Great stuff from him. Good breakdowns. Talking Eagles. Little Super Bowl talk as well. John McMullen at 7:30. The show must go on. Next guest, John Marks, gracing us with his presence. You can listen to John every day. I'm sure you already know. 2 to 6, Monday to Friday, with former Eagle Ike Reese on WIP up in Philadelphia. Follow him on Twitter at John Marks Media. So let's bring John into the conversation now. I want to get his thoughts, and I already know him, but I need him to share them with you. His thoughts on the Eagles and number 11. I'm not even going to use his name. John, how we doing?
What's going on, man? You can also hear me now on Sundays until 2 o'clock. It's 10 to 2 on CBS Sports Radio, the national network. So Sunday mornings after the Super Bowl, I'll be on from 10 to 2. Which
beautiful.
is cool.
Yeah, man. Congrats. That's awesome. I didn't even know that. So there you go. All right. So, John, I was listening to you actually a little bit today, and, I follow you, and I know your stance overall, I think, at least, with Carson Wentz and the Eagles. But first time we're talking here on The Fix. So fill the listeners in, and you can start really wherever you want. I mean, you can start from the benching of Carson Wentz to the firing of Doug Peterson to the stuttering hiring of Nick Sirianni.
Well, I would say, even though that it's nearly impossible to be like this with Carson Wentz, I've always felt like that I'm pretty Carson neutral. I saw him as more potential than actual star quarterback, like a lot of people did. And I think I actually, the way I felt kind of came true. I still think he has a lot of potential, but I don't know if he's going to be able to realize it here. So with Carson right now, it's pretty clear to me that he doesn't want to be back here, just based on pretty much everything. The first piece of news that came out was he had a relationship with Doug Peterson that couldn't be salvaged, and he won't play for him anymore. Doug Peterson gets fired. Now it's the organization that he has a problem with. I just find it hard to believe that he'd be able to come back here to Philadelphia after everything that's happened, kind of just looking into his psyche and feel like that he's going to develop into the quarterback that we thought he was going to be. He was bad this year. I feel like the Eagles gave him maybe too much rope, right? Like maybe if they would have benched him earlier in the season, they could have brought him back. But when they decided to actually bench him, then they felt like they couldn't even bring him back. So I think in hindsight, maybe if you would have benched him a little bit earlier, then maybe you could have brought him back. But either way, any way that you look at it, Ryan, it was a bad year. I think he can still be a good quarterback in the league, but with Jalen Hurts and now with that locker room, I think a lot of the players on the team, especially the younger ones, look at Jalen Hurts and be like, why would we put Carson Wentz in there? We saw what he did last year that was bad. The relationship with Doug, the relationship with the organization, I just don't know how you come back from it. So I'm hoping that they move on from him, because the idea of Wentz and Jalen Hurts being both in camp, being competing for the job or not competing for the job, or a faux job competition, right? Like it doesn't seem like that's the best recipe for starting off a Nick Sirianni-led team. So I don't know what's going to end up happening. I wouldn't bring both of them in the camp. I try to move on from Carson Wentz.
I'm completely with you, and in today's world, with Twitter especially, Eagles Twitter, Philadelphia sports Twitter, you have to be on one side of the fence or the other. God forbid you look at something objectively. And I'm not a Carson Wentz hater, but I'm classified as that because I I call out what I see. He played like crap, and you're a hater. You're a hater. I'm not a hater. This is the reality of the film, and I'm with you on the benching, but I'm going to add this. I was calling for him to be benched. Like, sit the dude down. He needs to take a breath. But then you leave Jalen Hurts in for what? Because if you're going to go back to Carson next year, why not bench him for a game and put him back in the next week? They left him out for 4 weeks, but then you insinuate Jalen Hurts could be the starter moving forward, and it's a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, I don't like. I think that the Eagles organization maybe would have tried to have more control over how it was handled, because like the one time that they actually I think gave Doug power was in this instance. Unfortunately, we don't really know exactly what happened because everything is being messaged through the media, so you can't get a straight answer on the record. But it seems like, and just kind of reading the situation, that Doug really was like, "Leave me alone. I'm not answering. I'm not getting help from anybody else. I'm benching Carson Wentz and I'm putting Jalen Hurts in. I want a spark." And I mean, obviously their relationship was terrible. It deteriorated. Doug either wouldn't step up to him, wouldn't coach him like he needed to be coached. Carson didn't respect him. Whatever it was, like, that relationship wasn't going to work. So, like, now what do you do? I agree with you that in hindsight, I wish they would have benched him a little sooner, and then they would have maybe been able to go back to him. But like He was starting to turn the corner. If you remember, he played pretty well against the Steelers and the Ravens. He actually brought them back, and it was the game coming out of the bye week. It was the Cowboys game or the Giants game coming out of the bye week. But there was like everybody expect him. I guess it was the Cowboys game where they won. He was so bad, and everybody had, at least I did. I psyched myself up to that being the coming out party of Carson Wentz, where he was finally gonna play a full game. It was a bad team. It was a bad quarterback they were facing, and he ended up. They almost cost them the game. Like, if you didn't have Ben DiNucci as the starter, you lose that game. So it started there to where it was like, well, hold on a second. Like, you're supposed to play better. This is a big game. Like, this isn't a game that you can come out and you can play like you did. So it's a mental thing with Carson Wentz, right? Like, if this was physical and like the offensive line was bad, right? I think he made it worse, but the roster wasn't great. The line wasn't great. Doug wasn't great. So there are other factors going on. It's not just all Carson Wentz, but mentally, he's just not strong enough for me. So, Ryan, this is not an easy situation because I don't think he has a ton of trade value. I think you can trade him if you find the right team, and maybe people are just kind of being in stealth mode right now. There's not a lot of smoke. There's not a lot of talk about Carson Wentz, and I don't know how it plays out because I don't think the Eagles are giving him away or doing a Jared Goff and giving draft picks up to get rid of him.
Yeah, and you bring up, we're talking with John Marks, WIP. You can listen to him every day, Monday to Friday, 2 to 6 with Ike Reese. You can also listen to him on Sundays now, CBS Sports Radio, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. John, you bring up the locker room dynamic, and I think that's interesting because you have, like, Sirianni was talking to Angelo Cataldi, I believe, yesterday morning, maybe, was it? Whenever it was. And he said, we are going to have, you have to talk like this when you're imitating Sirianni, we are going to have a competition at every position, including the quarterback. I'm paraphrasing. But I call BS, and I know that could just be coach speak, but that's something that if I'm a player potentially, and then you go into camp, you go into the locker room, and there's not a competition. Like, I don't know. I'm curious to see how this plays out in the locker room because there's guys that want to deuce. I'm sure there's guys that are scratching their heads saying, why is Doug not here? And how Carson Wentz is handled and how he performs early on especially is make or break, not just for the success on the field, but I think off it as well.
Yeah, and I think people are paying attention, too. And what Sirianni actually wouldn't do is that even though I guess technically he said there's competition for the quarterback, like he just kept talking in generalities. And when Angelo followed up on the question and said that includes the quarterback, he wouldn't say yes. He just kept circling back to there's always competition and you're always earning your job. First of all, you're not always earning your job. That's total BS, right? Like Fletcher Cox isn't going in the training camp fighting for his job.
Right.
Lane Johnson's not going in the training camp fighting for his job. There's a difference, and everybody understands that. And the way that Carson Wentz played last year and the way that Jalen Hurts came in, and, I thought he was pretty good when he came in. He certainly didn't take the job like he maybe had a chance of doing. But like it's just like it's a different situation. Everybody realizes it, but the Eagles are scared. It seems like to me the Eagles are scared to say one thing or another. I don't know if that's because they don't know what Carson Wentz wants to do, and they're more or less just saying, okay, well, when Carson decides what he wants to do, then we'll decide what we're going to do. It seems like that half of them they don't want him back, and then the other half is, well, what if we have to have him back? I don't know, but I do know this, that like if they're worried about pissing off their locker room by just giving Carson Wentz the job, right? Or they're worried about pissing Carson Wentz off by saying there's going to be a competition at quarterback. Either way, anybody can read right through what they're saying is they won't give an opinion. They're just playing games, and they're kind of dancing around the subject, which they don't need to do. If someone that actually had a command over a press conference, and I know Nick Sirianni didn't do a great job, and I'm not trying to say that he can't be a good coach in the National Football League. I'm not trying to say that, but he had no command. And if someone that actually had command of a press conference, or like even Chip Kelly, as much as we ended up hating Chip Kelly knew what to do in those press conferences. He gave you nothing, and he ran them. He had command. You have to be able to handle a simple question like that. If you want to say that there's always competition, then say that includes the quarterback position. Say, yes, that includes the quarterback position. Everybody is always playing for their job. So, the Eagles seem like they're acting scared to me. I don't know why, but at some point, something tells me, Ryan, in about a month and a couple of weeks, we're going to know if Carson Wentz is a quarterback here or not.
John, we look at the trade that just took place over the weekend, Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford. And now, of course, in the Delaware Valley, everyone's saying, ooh, well, wait a second. Does this mean there's a chance we could trade Carson Wentz? Whether you agree with that or not, I think that trade sparked that conversation throughout the entire area. And then I also look at the similarities between the Rams and the Eagles. Sean McVay, Doug Peterson, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, both drafted at the top of the class in 2016. One organization decided to stand behind the coach. The other stood behind the quarterback. Did you look at that trade once it was official and say, okay, well, maybe we can trade Carson? Or did that not really seem apples to apples for you?
Well, it seemed to me that if you want to get rid of Carson Wentz, maybe you're going to have to give up a draft pick, which I don't think the Eagles will do. I look at that trade as 2 separate trades. I almost look at it like they got a first and a third for Stafford, and then they traded Goff and a first for nothing to the Lions, right? Like, I feel like they could have moved Stafford for a first plus to another team. I know I've seen the Panthers were interested with the number 8 pick overall, which I would never do, but that's one thing that's out there. And and Stafford told the organization he didn't want to go to the Panthers. He didn't want to go to New England. So the Rams was really the team that he wanted to go to, and you were able to get that. And just by taking Goff's contract, what do they care? They get a first round draft pick. They're not trying to win anytime soon. They're trying for a real build in Detroit. But what that told me as it relates to the Eagles situation is that why would there be a market for Carson Wentz? Jared Goff, I don't like Jared Goff. I don't think Jared Goff's a great player. Let's be honest with what Carson Wentz is as a player right now. Like, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz are kind of the same player as far as success, except Goff has been to a Super Bowl.
Well, we know what Goff is. We have no idea what Carson is.
Yeah, that's why Ryan. I would take Carson Wentz over Jared Goff if I was a GM, just because the talent I see with Carson Wentz, it's real. It's just a matter of getting it out of him and keeping him consistent. Yeah. And I think with the right coach, you have a good chance of doing that. Goff kind of is what he is. You're right, and I think you can be a decent team with Goff. The Rams were. Here's what I think about the trade, and I don't think it doesn't make me feel any better about Carson Wentz getting moved. In fact, maybe it makes me feel worse. But Sean McVay is the new John Gruden. Sean McVay has just like that. I mean, think about this. To draft Jared Goff, they traded 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 2 third-round picks to trade from 15 to 1 to get Jared Goff in 2016. They gave him a new contract, and now they've traded 2 first-round picks to get rid of him and bring in Matt Stafford. So, I mean, look at the haul of picks and money that they gave to Jared Goff just to get rid of him and bring in a 32-year-old that's never done anything but pad stats. And it's a great story because now he's got to go to the Rams and win. He can't go and let's make the playoffs. No, he was supposed to be the missing ingredient. And McVay, to me, is coming off like John Gruden. A lot of wild. Jalen Ramsey, 2 first-round draft picks. They won't have a first-round draft pick in L.A. for 7 straight years when it's all said and done. 7 years. That's unthinkable in the NFL. So I think they're crazy, and I think that if you can find the right team for Carson Wentz, and maybe he has to not give money back, but maybe restructure the contract to make it a little easier for a new team to take, then I think maybe he can go. But it's going to take a situation where a team says, all right, we don't really like the draft picks. We want a quarterback this year. We feel like we can win with the right quarterback. And give us a third or a fourth round draft pick. Carson, redo your contract a little bit, and we'll take him. I don't know who that team is, but maybe there is one.
Couple more here for you, John, before I let you go. One more on the Eagles and then one or two Sixers. The youth of this coaching staff is being talked about a lot. I've been talking about it a lot on this show. It's you have to be under 40 years old in order to be a coach on the Philadelphia Eagles. Dude, I don't know. Is that good? Is that bad? I mean, I look at it like this. I've never been in an NFL locker room as a player or a coach, but you have a head coach now who's never called a play in the NFL. He's never been a head coach. He has coordinators and staff around him that are all young and somewhat new in their roles now as well. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to turn to someone who's been there and done that? Like, is that a concern for you?
I'm shocked at what they're doing. I'm shocked. You probably said the same thing I did after they hired Sirianni, which is, all right, now they'll find a veteran coordinator to pair him up with.
Yep.
Or they'll have the quarterback's coach that's been around the league, or they'll have somebody who's an assistant head coach and a position coach or whatever. You would have thought that they would have had some veteran guy in there just to kind of guide the way. It's good to have experience, right? They did the exact opposite. Now, the average age of all their coaches is 39 years old. And that's with Jeff Stoutland being 58. And Tracy Rocker, their defensive line coach, I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's older too. You're talking about Sirianni, 39. Steichen, their offensive coordinator, is 35. Jonathan Gannon, I believe, is 42. Their new special teams coordinator is 29 years old. Right? 29 years old.
Insane.
I mean, before, you wouldn't even sniff a coordinator job in your 20s. Right? Like now, it seems like you have to be in your 30s to get a job. It's amazing. Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, is 32 years old. Their new linebackers coach is 27 years old. That's the youngest in the league. Dude, they must not think that they're going to be competitive the next year and two, and they're hoping that this miraculously everybody grows together and everybody kind of comes up together. And Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, is very worried about emotional intelligence and caring coaches and things like that. Like, either you're a good coach or you're not, right? Like, you don't need to bring in the next Mike Holmgren tree and have Mariucci and John Gruden and Andy Reid and all these young guys that are the same thing, because you don't have the head coach that is able to teach them and train them. And, frankly, Nick Sirianni doesn't come off to me as being one of those guys. Dude, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, it doesn't feel like a good idea to me.
No,
that's for sure.
No, and you say grow together. I don't know. Like, I think that's a positive way to put it. I say they're going to be lost together. Like, they need someone to lead them in the right direction. I just think. Who knows, man? Like, maybe we're over dramatic with this. I just think it's a recipe for disaster.
No, we're not over dramatic with it. No one else is doing this.
I know.
Right, like Jeffrey Lurie, do you think he's reinventing the wheel? And that's the problem with the gold standard, then the new norm after that. Anytime they win, they get so full of themselves. Shane Steichen, just for everybody that knows this, Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, he's called plays. He called plays in the Chargers. Just do a Google search on him, and you'll see what Chargers fans think about him calling plays. They were happy when he didn't remain on staff, and we sent him out here. So you have a head coach who's going to call plays that's never called plays. You have an offensive coordinator that's called plays, but no one wants to call plays, so maybe it'll work out.
Yeah, maybe. Let's cross our fingers. Jeffrey Lurie, and I want to touch on this, one more Eagles. He's Jerry Jones 2.0, and I've talked a lot about Jeffrey Lurie throughout the second half of the season, before the Nick Sirianni hire, and even since then. But he's the problem, and you just sort of hit on it. Like, that's the bottom line problem with this organization in my mind, is Jeffrey Lurie has become just way too involved. I don't know what happened to this organization. Like, I grew up with McNabb and Andy Reid, and I felt like they were a little bit of that cliche gold standard. And something went wrong. I know Jeffrey Lurie always likes to be involved, but recently, man, it feels like he's taken all the credit and assigning blame to everyone else.
Yeah, so I'll leave it like this with Jeffrey Lurie. So he buys the team 94. He makes a very wise decision and didn't fold the public pressure to give Rich Kotite a contract extension. And the Eagles were very good at the time. It was during the season. It was a Monday night football game, and Al, Frank, and Dan were on the call. And Dan Deerdorf couldn't believe that Jeffrey Lurie wasn't giving Rich Kotite a contract extension. Lurie realized he was an idiot. Didn't extend him. Kotite went to the Jets and ruined the Jets for a couple of years there. But Jeffrey Lurie's the best decision that he's made as an owner has been with coaches and really with Andy Reid, because what he was able to do after that, from 1999 pretty much until he left in 2012, his franchise was in auto drive. They were still the same mess behind the scenes. The difference was you had an actual football guy and a really smart, bright guy like Andy Reid that was able to run things to where you didn't see a lot of the nonsense like you're seeing right now. So I feel like that for Jeffrey Lurie, when they were successful, it was Andy Reid, right? Like he got rid of Andy Reid, and I felt like most people at the time thought it was the right time to move on. And who knows if Andy would have been able to do what he's doing now if he remained in Philly. I don't think that he could. But since then, you've seen Chip Kelly. And, that worked for a little bit, and he got rid of him pretty quickly. Doug, that worked, and he got rid of him pretty quickly. I just like he's going to be involved. He's going to be involved, and I don't know typically how much an owner is involved in personnel and things like that outside of Jerry Jones. All I know is that I've seen some reports and I've seen some stories over the last few weeks that he's involved in picking draft picks. Or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was a Jeffrey Lurie pick, right? Like anytime you see that, your team is not going to be good. You can't have your owner with draft picks and liking this player, liking that player. So it's a borderline disaster, and I guess we just have to see where this Sirianni hiring going. Here's the bottom line, Ryan. If Howie Roseman and company can draft some players and they can build this team with some talent, they'll be fine. It all starts with that.
Yeah, and that's another big problem that we don't have enough time to get into. All right, so, John, last one before I let you go. Just transition to Sixers. Joel Embiid named Player of the Month, MVP odds up to plus 550. He's been carrying this team on his back, and it's not like the team's that bad. We don't have enough time to get into Simmons and everything else. But just your thoughts on the Doc Rivers era, still very early on, Embiid, and just where do you think this team can realistically end up this season?
Yeah, it's been. I think most people love the Doc Rivers hiring, and it's been pretty much what I expected. He brought a real credibility and professionalism that guy. I love Brett Brown. Brett Brown's a really good dude, and he was here for a long time, and I appreciate him. But it was time to kind of move on and step up, and I think they did that with Doc. And what I wanted him to challenge his young guys to be more professional, and mainly Joel Embiid. And what I've seen out of Embiid this year is something that I haven't seen. And we're still early, but I've seen a professional nature from him, whether it's the shape that he's in or how he's bringing it every night. I haven't seen a lot of the childish nonsense that I've seen in previous years. And truth be told, I've been a guy that's really been down on Embiid just because he's so erratic. And it's tough to count on a guy when A, he's injury prone, B, he's out of gas by the end of the season, and C, he's all over the place. So this year, you know what he's done? He's done pretty much everything very well. They haven't used him too much. I think they have a really good feel for when he can sit out. He's missed 5 games so far. This is the first time I'm going to say it, and I almost feel like that I'm going to put the jinx on it because I've been kind of negative with the Sixers. They've got a really good team, and they could win. I mean, they could go to the finals. Something's wrong with the Nets. They don't play defense, right? So The one thing with Doc and the Sixers is that if they can get that real team feel where they have role players and everybody has a role, and Doc gets them going, because they haven't had that feel for so long with Brett. They have a feel for a team that could really do something. If they can get one more player, I don't know if that's J.J. Redick or it's somebody that gets released and then they end up signing later on in the season. I think they're a player away. I still don't know about Ben every night, and like you said, that's a whole nother discussion. But so far, so great. Yeah. I mean, they look great. It's been a great. They're best team in these. So I like what I see so far. They just got to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think they could be a player away, but they have the shooters. They have the coach that seems to be able to get Embiid the ball in the space that he likes to operate. Well, like you said, so far so good. Still very early on, and looking forward to dive more into Sixers talk and following their progress as the season progresses. John, I appreciate it, man. I know you're a busy fella. 2 to 6, Monday to Friday, WIP with Ike Reese, CBS Sports, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Follow him on Twitter at John Marks Media. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Anytime.
All right, there he is, John Marks. Great stuff from John, as always. Love catching up with him. And we're rocking and rolling. Let's get to the top of the hour break. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. It's flying by for me. Phone line 609-445-1490. A lot of local talk tonight. And it's been good stuff. So this show is never going to be the same every night. Okay, you're going to tune in one night, and we'll have 3 guests talking Eagles and Sixers. You'll tune in the next night, and we'll have 3 guests talking about everything from the sports gambling angle. We typically go down that road most of the time, but tonight we're changing it up a little bit, and it's been a lot of fun. Hope you've been having fun with me as well, and we still have another hour to go. So let's get to the break, and we'll get into the third and final hour when we come back here on The Fix, live in the Prop Swap studios of AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.